So, Doris, you are the director of the Center for Professional Ethics and you work on ethics in research. What do you see as the biggest ethical problems in current research, especially in the field of social science, considering that in social sciences, we actually often do research with or on vulnerable population groups?
Thanks, Lisa. That's a very good question. I think the biggest problem in research today, especially research in resource poor settings, is one of attitude. Both the attitude that the researcher knows best and the attitude that getting research results trumps doing the research with fairness and respect. There is a sentence that I really like from a book by Linda Tui Weiss Smith. It's called Decolonizing Methodologies, and it says that researchers told us things already known, suggested things that would not work, and made careers for people who already had jobs. And this speaks to the attitude that research will bring good even without the genuine involvement of the people who are concerned. Colleagues of mine have written a case study where US researchers developed a GM banana to help people in Uganda with nutritional problems when Uganda has bananas with a better nutrition content of the vitamin precursor they were trying to enhance with the US GM variety. So that's an attitude that is patronizing and that stops a lot of genuine engagement. And the other attitude about research trumping everything is that small matters of ethics and integrity can be ignored if the science is moved forward. So, for instance, research has shown that researchers would consider misuse of research funds, plagiarism, wrong allocation of credit and authorship, overhyping research results, and exploitation of graduate students as okay as long as it helps science. So that's the wrong attitude. So I think the main problem is a problem of attitude.
Okay. Well, it is definitely clear that ethics in research is a very important topic, and I think it's becoming more and more relevant, but also visible. What motivated you personally to get involved in research ethics? So maybe can you describe your professional path that led to your engagement in this topic?
There were a lot of coincidences in my research career, especially because I started out with a BWL degree, as the Germans say. It's a mixture of economics and management. And then I worked for Warner Music. And only by a lot of coincidences did I then end up in philosophy. And all the decisions have sort of happened without a particular purpose. But I think what started my career in research ethics was after my PhD, I worked for a short time at the University of Witwatersrand in Johannesburg. And at the same time, I watched a BBC documentary on benefit sharing. And these two, having access to people who are working on benefit sharing directly and an interest in the topic, led to all sorts of things. For instance, I obtained money to run a workshop near Cape Town. And I was told on benefit sharing, and I was told, don't invite any indigenous people, even though they were the beneficiaries and the people concerned with benefit sharing. It will just create too many problems. So this was another example of this attitude problem that I noted earlier. And I invited two Sun leaders. They were by far the best speakers. Everybody listened very intently, and it really brought the conference forward. And I've been doing this ever since. And that probably sparked my interest in research ethics.
Yeah, that is really interesting that it's actually because of coincidences. Sometimes I feel this happens to quite a few people, that actually just being confronted with a certain situation then leads one to think about research ethics. Like as a development economist, we are suddenly in the field and then being confronted with certain decisions. Yeah, that's interesting that you share this kind of experience.
Perhaps it's a good motto to look where you can be the most useful as a researcher, because a researcher shouldn't just focus on their own careers, but should really do something that improves matters somewhere. That's really the reason for doing research, in my view.
Yeah.
And then if you can see that you can be useful somewhere, just that's where you could go.
Mm. Yeah, I'm also still hoping somehow that with time, maybe this can become a little bit institutionalized so that we don't have to rely on coincidences to get involved in this kind of topic, but especially for researchers who plan to become researchers in those kind of projects, that there's some guidance even during their studies, at least some courses that create moments where you are encouraged to think about research ethics.
I think it's fabulous, for instance, that you as a group of graduates have come together to create this ethics course for your fellow students. Fabulous.
Yeah, thank you very much. We hope that this can spark more interest and in also the new groups of students coming in. Okay, now that is clear that this is a big issue, can you maybe tell us a bit which current initiatives exist that address these problems, especially like attitude, and maybe create more room for ethical considerations in research?
I think it's very difficult to deal with attitudes. What helps, in my view, is if people who are exploited, including researchers in the global south, stand up for themselves and make it clearer that this is exploitative. For instance, there is a very good article on The Conversation by two Indonesian researchers who say, and professors, they say they do not want to take part in helicopter research anymore, where people with funds from the north fly in, do all the research, get all the publications, get all the credit, fly out with the samples again, and they are just standing by or collecting samples. And if people make it clearer that this is exploitative, it will change the attitude. But at the same time, one initiative I've been involved in will hopefully help, and that's the Global Code of Conduct for Research in Resource-Poor Settings, which is a very short code that gives guidance on how to do research in resource-poor settings, with fairness, respect, care, and honesty.
Okay, we will talk about this code in a little while. So, but that means that it's actually coming from two sides. So both from the resource-poor settings, where researchers say, okay, we don't want to work like this, but then also from initiatives, maybe then from the global north, saying, okay, we actually also take initiative to change something.
And it's very important that funders take these steps. For instance, the code I just talked about has been adopted by the European Commission for the framework programs. And I think that's a very big step a funder can take to stop, for instance, ethics dumping, the export of unethical practices from high-income countries to lower-income settings.
So ethics dumping is actually a good keyword. Can you maybe offer like a definition of what you understand as ethics dumping?
It's a concept that is currently evolving, but the main point is that it's a global phenomenon nowadays that involves the offshoring of research, that you take research to a place where there may be weaker governance mechanism, and hence you can do research that you wouldn't be able to do at home. Hence it involves moving from a high-income country to a lower-income country. But very importantly, it's not always done on purpose. So it can also be done due to lack of cultural knowledge. Recently, we've done research to identify categories of ethics dumping, and we found that there are 6. There is patronizing conduct, which I've already talked about. There are unfair distributions of benefits and burdens. There is culturally inappropriate conduct. Then double standards, lack of due diligence, and also lack of transparency. These were the 6 categories we identified for ethics dumping.
Okay, probably each of these categories we could talk about for a long time and go into detail. But yeah, thank you already for this first introduction.
Pleasure.